Welcome to Somerset Community College and the continuation of our 50th anniversary celebration. We have had a great day today with the beginning of the Arno Conference, and we are going to continue tonight with our presentation that we have lined up for you. I think that you are in for a special treat. We welcome you to Somerset Community College. It is fantastic to have to put out more chairs. That's just absolutely wonderful. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce to you the president of Somerset Community College, Dr. Joe Marshall. Dr. Marshall.
We are so happy to see all of you tonight. They wouldn't let me introduce Bragg because they knew I'd talk too long. But I cannot tell you how happy I am to share with you tonight someone from my home state of Alabama and someone that I have the greatest respect for, and I know that you will, if you have not read his book, you will. Chew on it.
It's set for John Berlew, so you
He forgot his heels tonight.
When John's up here and then Rick comes, that's really the long and the short of it. Is that better? Yeah. I am delighted to have him here. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and it was due to the help of a very good friend of mine and someone who's worked with us on many of our programs that we're having this year. And I want to say a special thank you to Debbie Chapman. Where are you, Debbie? Stand up. She's kind of Now, you know, this is part of the Arno Conference. And I want to tell you how happy I am that we have this going as well as it's going, thanks to people like Lynn and Wanda and the people who work so hard to have this conference. I have to share just a brief memory, if I may. When I first came, and I heard about Harriet Arno, and I had read The Doll Maker, and I thought, someone said she lived near here, just went to school in a little schoolhouse near here. And I thought, we really need to do something to recognize this local writer. There are more writers from Kentucky than there are from Alabama. In Alabama, we have to take care of those that we find. But I've noticed that in Kentucky, we have quite a few. But anyway, I talked to Lynn Crabtree, and we started looking at the first Arno Conference. And I was telling the group that about what began as the Harper Lee Conference in South Alabama, in Monroeville, Alabama. Is this one better? Yeah. And I was telling a group about the Harper Lee Conference and wanted them to go down to visit Monroeville and participate in it because I thought that we could kind of model after that. And I remember one person, I will not name, looked at me and said, "Why would we want to do a Harper Lee Conference?" I said, well, it'd be a good idea, but no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing an Arno Conference that would be modeled on that one. And I believe Lynn did go to Monroeville, right? But she's not the one who said that. But I'm so glad to know. How many of you are here with the conference? What a great turnout. We have a good program tomorrow. I know you had a good one today. Wanda said it went very well. Wanda, Freeze, if you'll stand up. I want to also say thank you to Marcy Randall. Stand up, Marcy. Rick. Marcy is the person who has headed up our Common Read program, and practically everyone here and many of our students have read all over with shouting, so they will be very familiar with your work, or with at least with that, and they may have already read the others. And tonight I want to recognize a couple of people. Cindy Klaus, who's worked to get this going, and blessed with so many of our events, all of our events this time. She's worked with Debbie on this, as did Wanda. But, and you know about Cindy, she's not what we call literary minded. But she loved this book, right? So I'm not sure what that says about her. But anyway, it is a delight to work with Cindy, I will tell you. We also have, I want to say thank you to two of our leaders who come to anything and everything that they can. They're both board chairs. One is our foundation chair, Steve Morgan, and Charlene Harris. And as I said, I am delighted to share with you just one more of great things. May be grace. Well, then there's Bear Blount. that comes from my home state of Alabama. It is a pleasure to have Rick here. And John, right now, I think we're going to have some music, and then John's going to give you a proper introduction for Rick. I just want to tell you that I love his writing, and knowing him, you understand why he was able to write it. And as I've told many, many people, any mother who has a son, or any son, should read his work. He really captures that relationship in such a way that makes you laugh, but also makes you appreciate what God gives us in terms of our relationships with our mothers. So at this time, in your honor, we have 3 people who are going to come and do 2 songs, I believe, Dr. Pello, is that right? Wanda Freeze, Sharon Whitehead, our dean, and Jenny Watkins.
As I went down in the river to pray, studying about those good old ways, and who shall wear a starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh, mothers, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about those good old ways, and who shall wear a starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, fathers, let's go down, come on down. Oh, brothers, let's go down in the river to pray. Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Everybody's gone in the cotton and the corn, didn't leave nobody but the baby. Don't you worry, pretty baby. Don't you worry, pretty baby. Sugar in the rock and the honey don't stop, didn't leave nobody but the baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Come and lay your bone with a red dress on, didn't leave nobody but the baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Go to sleep, you little baby. Come and lay your bones on the alabaster stones, and be my ever-loving baby. Go to sleep, little babe. Go to sleep, you little baby.
Thank you. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce our featured speaker tonight, Mr. Rick Bragg. Mr. Bragg was born in Alabama. He grew up there and worked at several newspapers before joining the New York Times in 1994. He went on to serve as a national correspondent for the Times, based in Atlanta, and later became the Miami bureau chief for the Times. He now works as a writing professor at the University of Alabama's journalism program in its College of Communication and Information Sciences. All Over But the Shoutin', a memoir of Mr. Bragg's childhood, was written as a tribute and a testimony to his mother. Students on our campus have been reading all over about But the Shoutin' as part of the college's newly established Common Read experience, which allows students to read the same book and then gather to discuss common themes and thoughts. And you met Marcy Randall, who's been leading that project. Mr. Bragg has twice won the prestigious American Society of Newspaper Editors Distinguished Writing Award and more than 50 other writing awards in his 20-year career. In 1992, he was awarded a Nieman Fellowship at Harvard University. Mr. Bragg is also the author of Somebody Told Me, a critically acclaimed collection of his newspaper stories, and I Am a Soldier Too, the Jessica Lynch story, as well as others. His writing is also featured on a regular basis in Southern Living magazine. We will have questions and answers for Mr. Bragg after his presentation this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bragg.
Hit in the mouth with one of these things. Yeah, it was kind of up here, and it fell, and I was too old and slow to get out of the way. It was terrible. Thank y'all for coming. It's wonderful to be in a place where I don't need an interpreter. Think about it. President Joe and I have known each other for a long time. Kentucky is kind of like home away from home. I don't want to insult anybody. You got to be careful about that. But I think we've got a lot more in common with the people up here than we do in the veranda South. You know, the New Orleans, Charleston. And I love New Orleans. I lived in New Orleans 4 years. Man, to somehow not have to go to prison. This is.
They can't hear you in the back, so we're going to turn it up.
Are there any lip readers?
Can you sign?
You know, I can't. But I've been doing this so long. Seems like people just know what I was going to say. But I have when I come up here, I don't have to explain what red clay looks like. I don't have to explain why it's necessary for a man to go down in a hole a mile down to make $1. You know, I don't have to do that. So this is some better. Now don't get me wrong, if you're going to make a living in the book business, you got to sell as many books in San Francisco as you do in Silicaga. Which means absolutely nothing to y'all, except maybe y'all. But this is nice. I think when we go to the question part of this, I'd really rather talk with you than talk at you. I'll answer anything. I mean, I'll even tell the truth. Because you reach your point about 55 when two things happen in your life. One is you're too old and tired to lie. You know, and the other thing is you think at 55 you can tell your mama she's crazy. Up until, no, you can't. At 50, yes, you can. At 55, who's doing this, you or me?
Who's 55?
Before we go any further, I really do think that, how do you follow singing like that? I mean, how do you possibly do that? I don't sing sober. There was a time in my life when, not sober, I would just lay down on the bed and put one foot on the floor. There's something about having a foot on the floor that made it okay. And I would sing every country music song I ever heard. I mean, I'd sing Hank Williams and Johnny Cash, and I'd even sing Elvis. And I'm not going to do that tonight. This book that y'all honored by reading was the first book I ever wrote. It's not very complicated. It's a love story for my mama. And I think that's why it works. I don't think, and we talked about this before, I don't think it's region. You know, we probably have had as many people read it north of the Ohio River as south. We've had, it means something to people, you know, a continent or two away. And I'm grateful for that. I think it's not region. I think it's class. I think it's class. And let's just try a little experiment. And don't lie. And don't put on airs. But how many of you, by show of hands, how many of you are descended one generation, two generations, or three from people who worked with their hands? And that's why it works. That's why it works. You know, otherwise, I think that the beginning of the book doesn't mean anything to people. No, it means something to them, but in a more like their own safari, you know, that like it means something to them, but it's look from the outside looking in. And the great thing about that book was you felt like you were inside looking out, because everybody has got a drunk uncle. And if you don't, you're probably putting on airs. My Uncle Jimbo really did win a $20 bet by eating a bologna sandwich while sitting on a dead mule. You can't make that up. Everybody has a mama or an aunt or a grandmother who worked themselves half to death so that our life could be, you know, that much better. Everybody knows the power of poverty, or they've heard it. And everybody knows the power of liquor and the joys and the sorrows that can flow from such a tiny little neck of a bottle. You know. I can say that up here because my daddy never drank very much legal liquor. My grandfather made liquor for 30 years in the foothills of the Appalachians and never got caught. But it was of a different color from the liquor. But I think it's because y'all know the book. I think you know a sorry man when you see one. I think you just know it. And I think you don't need to have the first page of the book explained to you. I'd love to say that first page in that book, flowed, like poetry out of me, but it didn't. I worked 3 months on that page. 3 months on one page in a high-rise office building in Atlanta, Georgia. I'd love to say I wrote it under a willow tree or at the end of a red dirt Coltonwood Road. I didn't. I sat there in that office building on it seemed like the 20th floor, and I could actually see Alabama off in the distance. And where my people come from is 40 minutes from the Georgia line. So I think most people around here get that page. I used to stand amazed and watch the redbirds fight. They would flash and flutter like burning rags through a sky unbelievably blue, swirling, soaring, plummeting. And on the ground they were a blur of feathers stabbing for each other's eyes. I've seen grown men stop what they were doing, stop pulling corn or lift their heads out from under the hood of a broken down truck just to watch it. And once, when I was little, I watched one of those birds peck itself to death in the side mirror of a truck, hurling itself against that unyielding image till the glass was cracked and smeared with blood. And I asked an old man who worked for my Uncle Ed, an old snuff-dipping man named Charlie Diddins. I said, Charlie, why do you reckon that bird did that? And he told me it was just its nature. I think most of us understand what that means. I have had whole classes say, what does that mean? They didn't talk up at Sewanee, or down at Sewanee, and a lot of rich kids up there, and they raised their hands in unison. When I said, are there any questions? They said, yeah, what did that first page mean? And I said, it's a metaphor or a simile. I'm not really sure about what the difference is between a metaphor and a simile. Of kind of Southern men. Southern men, sorry Southern men. They look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. And they can't live with that. And you can see this kind of picture. It's great when you look into a young person's eyes and something akin to enlightenment pops up. It's like you just got them a pizza. But I just wanted to write something to honor her for dragging me 1,000,000 miles on a cotton sack. I wanted to write something to honor her for raising other people's children so that I could have school supplies. And, I also bought her a couple of houses. That might have been more important. But I also wanted to do a love story for the region. I wanted to do a love story for the South. I'm not one of those Southerners who yammers on and on and on about sweet tea. I'm not one of those Southerners that thinks we're just a pristine people. We made a lot of mistakes as a region. I realize you can't blame Kentucky for that. But, there was that Civil War thing. We was kind of on the wrong end of that. Then please, don't some Confederate reenactor throw something at me. We're kind of at the wrong end of that, and then there's that civil rights thing. We were kind of on the wrong side of that. And so we're not perfect. But I wanted to write a love story for those that I thought were. For the woman who stands on a crate like my grandmother did, on a Coca-Cola crate, and works 12-hour shift in a cotton mill. When the whistle blows for break, she goes out on a concrete slab and nurses the baby, and then goes back in and works another 6 hours. I wanted to write a love story for all those people who lost their fingers, hands, and arms, and lungs to machines. I wanted to write a love story for anybody that ever looked down a roll of cotton and couldn't see the end of it, and it broke their heart. So these were what we wanted to try to do with this book. And honestly, God, when I started writing it, I wasn't real sure what a memoir was. First of all, people didn't even pronounce it that way. I heard Pat Conroy say it, and he called it memoir. And I actually remember thinking to myself, what in the hell is that? But that was as complicated as that book was. And it's hard to write about the South for Yankees. You know, you got to write it for them too, because the fellow that go broke just writing it for 10 folks. I mean, really, I got to make a living at this. You know, they sold a whole bunch of them in China. And when they gave me the book and it had the Chinese characters, I'm like, I don't know what it says. I got no idea what it says, and nobody's going to read it to me. And it's just like that. And then you come to like a word like possum, and it'd be in English. No, I'm not, you don't believe me? You can buy those here. Go online, order it. Although, why, God, I don't know why you want to. But I digress. You know, because we put up with a lot. We put up with a lot from our brethren across the Ohio River. We really did. We put up with a lot of misunderstanding. My doorman in New York City, I actually lived in a building that had a doorman, which was pretty funny. I didn't rent it. My newspaper did. They rented me an apartment for free. Which is, if you're going to live in New York City, that's the way to go about it. You know, that's the only way to really go about it. But when he heard my accent, I'm not making this up, he started saying everything twice. And everything twice. And then he started talking slow. And he would say, and he liked me, and he was a great guy, you know, but he was a New Yorker through and through. And he said, now, I can't do a New York accent, so I ain't gonna try. He said, now, Rick, what you do is you go out the door. That's that door right there. And you go out on the sidewalk and you turn left. That's this way. And when you get to the corner, you go left again. That's that way. And by the time, like 2 weeks had passed, he had made me stupid. I needed everybody to tell me things twice. But there are just some things, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, because believe me, your accents are not that drastically different from mine. But there's some things that just sound better in a Southern accent. The music we heard inherently Southern. I don't know where y'all are from, but your heart has got the South in it. But you know, writers sound good. You know, and writers sound good in our accent. I don't have one of those Shelby Foote accents, you know, where you know you just think he's about to have a julep. I don't have one of them. Oh, I'm not going to make fun of juleps up here. I'm sorry. Sometimes I forget where I'm at. But still, even in my accent, it works. The first page of Ava's name, which was the sequel to All Over the Shouting, it was actually kind of a prequel. It's the story of my grandfather, the bootlegger. And he, the first line or two was about my grandmother. And I began with, she was old all my life. Even when I was little, sitting in the red dirt, fascinated by my toes. Ava's face had a line in it for every hot mile she ever walked, for every fit she ever threw. Her eyes were pale, pale blue behind the yellow glass of her spectacles. The blind have eyes like that. But Ava could see just fine. Ava could see forever. She could look in the dregs of your coffee cup and tell you that you would walk on strange ground. We used to joke with her because she had more than mild infatuation with a man who sold the Roman candy from his truck. Did y'all have that up here? Roman Candy Company, you didn't have that? And we would joke with her when she was in her rocker. We would say, Grandma, are you going to get you a man? And her feet in those big, heavy black shoes, y'all know the kind I'm talking about. Those big, heavy black shoes would slam down on the porch, and the runners of that chair would stop in mid-squeak. And her mind would drift off to a time when the rivers used to run wild in that part of the world before the TVA turned them into a bunch of big faucets that you could turn on and off at will. And she would look at us, and this like fierce gleam would come into her eye, and she would say, "No, hon, I ain't gonna get me a man." And then she would just stop and look off in the distance. And she would look at us and say, "I had me one." And I can't imagine that story being told in an accent from Queens. Just can't do it. But there are some accents that you don't. Well, look, we flew in from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Roll Tide. And the only place on earth that might possibly be as sports crazy is here. The ball is a different shape, But we were flying in, and I didn't really get scared because I knew the pilot was a capable man. And you know that when you're on a plane and you hear, you're in that, when your stomach is bouncing up to your throat and back down again, and you think that it's just going to all be over. And then you hear that voice come in on the intercom. That voice from, Bogalusa, or, from Knoxville, or from, Montgomery. And that voice says, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We run into a little bit of rough air, but it ain't no big deal. We're going to climb up a little bit, and we'll have you back down on the ground here in just a few minutes. Y'all enjoy the ride." Ain't nothing going to happen. Because you have got a capable Southern man that is Then, there are the times you might not want a Southern accent. Like if you're in the hospital getting brain surgery. And the doctor busts through those double doors, Roll Tide bandana around his head. says, "Woo! Man, I mean, that was a roughing." You don't want to hear that. So I wanted to do a book that, yeah, obviously I didn't touch on those things, but I wanted to do a book that was a love story for our people. And then I did another one. Because the great thing about books is if you do a book and people buy it in Belgium, then damned if they don't want you to do another one. You can edit this out, right? You can't edit the downs out. You should have told me that, Joe. I would have been more careful. Okay. She said it. It's going to go downhill from here. But I just wanted to do something for those people. I wanted to do something for people like my Uncle Ed, who you gave me my first job. I would hold the chisel against the rim, the steel rim of a dump truck tire. Those things are like this high. And I would hold it as he swung a sledgehammer against the top. And I held it like this. And you had to hold it right on what is called the bead of the rubber and the rim. And he would swing and swing and swing. And he had been run over as a child and had steel rods holding both his legs together. And wore work khakis every day of his life. He'd swing that sledge, and you know, when I was real small, it never occurred to me to be afraid, you know. And then I got older, and then one day it just occurred to me that if he misses, if he misses, I mean, it's a sledgehammer, if he misses, I'm crippled for life. And I looked up one day when I was down there. I think I might have started dating at this time. I said, "Uncle Ed, what if you miss?" And he just looked at me, and he said, "Son, I won't miss." And that's the kind of Southern man I want to be. And that's the kind of books I wanted to bring to the readers. I guess if you grow up, and some of y'all know what I'm talking about, I got an easy job. I've been shot at more times than I can count. I have been hit in the head with a chunk of concrete. I've been tear gassed in 5 countries. I've covered the Taliban, worked on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and I covered the Tom coup, the killers in Haiti. And I've written about, you know, machine gun fire and housing projects in New Orleans. And so I know I'm not I'm not a weak man, but I don't think I'm as tough as they are. I don't think I'm as tough as those men who came before me in the world. I don't think I'm as tough as my brother Sam, you know, who worked 17 years in cotton. So it's been kind of a constant struggle for me to try to live up to that ideal. I want to be open-minded. I want to be well-read. You know, I want to read all the Dickens I can get my hands on and all the Steinbeck I can find. But I want to be able to break down the truck tire. And it came to its worst when I'd get on the plane. And I might be going somewhere to get shot at. But I'd get on the plane in a sport jacket. And invariably, I don't know if this happens to y'all, but if there's a good-sized fella out there, why is it that we always have to sit next to the other good-sized fella out there? Why don't we ever get to sit next to a gymnast? Or a jockey? I never get to sit next to you. Ever. Never get to sit next to you. I have to sit next to a guy who's bigger than me. But it's worse than that. He gets on that plane. And he's 6'3", 6'4", 280. But he's got muscles. And he's wearing a jumper that's been scorched through, you know. And his skin is burned tobacco brown. And, you know, he gets on that plane, and I see him coming. I know he's going to sit next to me. If I was on the plane with the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, I would sit next to the guy that carried their luggage on. And he sits down and he looks at me. And I know that this is somebody who works for a living. And I say, "Hey." He says, "Hey." And then he asks me that question, that first question that people always ask, "What do you do?" What do you do? And at first I just told him, I'm a writer. And they give you that look. You know, that look. And they say the same thing. It's happened more than three, 4 times in my life. Say the same thing. "That must be fun." Or "I bet that's fun, ain't it?" Like I cut out paper dolls. "What do you do?" He says, "I work 40 on, 40 off, out on the oil derrick, natural gas. You know, it's good money if you can get it, except when we have a blowout. It blows us off the platform into the Gulf of Mexico. And that's not so bad unless we throw our garbage out and the bull sharks are circling around. But if you can get back up on, it's just happening. If you get back up on the platform quickly, you're usually okay." Or they say, "I work on the oil pipeline up in Alaska. It's good money if you can get it. You know? Only bad thing is while you're welding, sometimes the grizzly bears, you can't hear them coming up behind you. But I found, a fellow told me this, I found that if you just touch them with the end of that welding rod, they'll run off." Now what do you do again? Hey, that's fun, ain't it? One of the things I tried to do with the large S from my writing life, and large S is a relative term, but I tried to keep my mama happy. You know, in Shouting, I wrote about buying her a house. First house she ever had, 4-bedroom brick house on a hill. I thought that'd do her, you know? A woman who never had anything with her. She didn't like it because it had too many light bulbs. She counted them. It had too many light bulbs. So, I bought her a red cedar cabin in the middle of 40 acres of mountain pasture. And it came complete with the ridge line where her daddy had made liquor. There's still rusted pieces of her daddy's seal on that original one. And it also came with a whole pasture full of beautiful, purebred, prize-winning Hereford cattle. And now everybody's going to black-faced cattle because they're less prone to disease, but Herefords are just beautiful. Anybody that's ever seen a pasture full of Herefords, they're beautiful. And that seemed to make her happy, Right in the middle of it, right in the middle of that 40 acres is where she lives. But the great thing is that with those Hereford cattle came 2 or 3, depending on the season, 2 or 3 prize-winning Hereford bulls. There's something beautiful about a Hereford bull. But what was more beautiful was when I got on that plane and that big whipper sat next to me and said, "What do you do?" I just looked at him and kind of squinted and said, "I raise bulls." Wow. I bet that's fun, ain't it? Yeah. I worked on my squint, at one, yeah. You gotta be careful though, if they hand you up, they'll gore you to death. I try to sound like Tommy Lee Jones from Lonesome Dove. Yeah, it's a paradise, this gate tells it. Yeah. That was wonderful. That was just wonderful to do that, be able to do that. One day I get a phone call. It's my mama, and she says, I'm not making this up, "Hon, we got to get rid of the bulls." And my heart sank. And I said, "Well, for God's sake, Mama, what happened?" And she said, "Well, hon, the young bull chased me when I went down to the pond to feed my fish." And this is what I meant about you reach a certain age when you can say to your mama, "Well, hell, Mama, that's just crazy." Because they're pets. I mean, they're pets. And she said, "Well, it happened. My mama doesn't believe that fish in their natural environment can survive." So she daily takes a sack. She goes to the day-old bread outlet, and gets like 14 sacks of day-old bread. And daily takes one full sack of white loaf bread to the pond and tears it up and throws it in there to feed her fish. We have the only bass and brim in the state of Alabama that have diabetes. So I said, "Well, Mama, you're crazy, and I'll prove it." So I got in my car and drove 2 hours. Didn't even go to the house. Walked to the gate, opened the gate, went in, closed the gate, and strode. We got English teachers here, right? Strode, sure. Because I'm not going on until we settle it. Strode boldly down to the pond. And I made it about 14 steps before I was set upon by the young bull. He apparently was stealing his oats, and he didn't like anybody else in his pasture. So I, with the athletic grace that I have and gymnastic abilities, fled, screaming, behind a water oak tree. Now, water oak trees are not like live oaks. Y'all got water oaks up here, right? You not have water oaks? Water oaks are, how live oaks go like this. Their limbs come out. They'll almost touch the ground. They'll grow out and then they'll go up and down. Water oaks have a uniform, pretty trunk that goes straight up, which is to say, there was nothing to climb. So I used the trunk of the tree the way that a rodeo clown uses a barrel. I would move, I mean, of course I can't move the tree, so I would move around the tree trunk with the bull. It's amazing how nimble they are. And first of all, in case some of you are wondering if this is like Southern humor, there were witnesses to this. And I was just saying, after a while, he backed up. And you know those Bugs Bunny cartoons where the bull, Bugs is the matador, you know? Obviously, this is a highbrow group. Bugs is the matador, and you know, the bull actually paws the ground. You know they actually paw the ground? They actually paw the ground. And they actually snort, you know? And I thought, well, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die. I'm not going to get run over by the bull because I'm not getting out from behind this tree. But I'm going to grow old and die. And then I look up, and my mama's porch is a real high porch. And I look up, and she's standing on the porch. And instead of looking at me in alarm, like, you know, I'm her boy, you know, she's got her hands crossed and she's going. Traffic. I'm not making it traffic has begun to stop because obviously something entertaining is going on the Mark Green Road. And you can do just about anything to a Southern boy, but you cannot shame him. You know? So I look around for any kind of weapon, and there are no rocks big enough to, you know. I can tell you right now, he was utterly unfazed by me throwing cow manure at him. Which, in case you ain't never tried, it's hard to get a grip on it. And then I saw it. When I was younger and slimmer, I used to be able to dunk a basketball. Now I couldn't dunk it and make it